Moving.
Okay, David, thank you very much for the invitation to this GeoTalks. Today is the GIS Day. Then to commemorate the GIS Day, I'm going to present how social media and crowdsourcing platforms are combined with geographic information systems for emergency response after earthquakes. I'm going to present the cases of the 2020 Zagreb and the Aegean earthquake. This presentation will be divided in 7 parts. And as I say, it will have 2 case studies. During our daily life, we check Facebook, or we upload pictures to Instagram or to Flick, or we write our opinions, we post our opinions on Twitter, and we watch videos on YouTube, or we upload videos to Snapchat or to TikTok, and recently others have joined OnlyFans. But what happened when an earthquake or a tsunami occur? These platforms explode with a lot of images and posts, and even some citizens report the earthquake and the intensity that they felt using apps such as Lastquake app, which is a free app mobile developed by the European Mediterranean Seismological Center for gathering intensity report and testimonies. Then the question is, which kind of data provide us social media and crowdsourcing platform? They provide us with pictures of damages, maps with the spatial distribution of damages in buildings, and message of solidarity, images of damages in buildings, arriving and distribution of humanitarian aid, and evacuation actions. Then my question is, for all of you, is this data useful? I will say yes, but then the question is, for what is useful? How is useful? Then I'm going to explain this in the presentation. So, for what? Social media data is useful to support emergency response, for post-disaster need assessment, for support earthquake reconnaissance missions, for plant or to evaluate the post-disaster recovery, and to improve preparedness program. Social media and crowdsourcing platforms have recently become a valuable source of a large first-hand image and text data that combined allow us to have information. However, posts on Twitter and Instagram and the comments from the Lastquake app user can inform of unstructured data. Then we need to use sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis is a natural language processing technique that classifies the unstructured text data into polarity. So, after an earthquake, most of the data will have a negative polarity because it contains a lot of expression of fear, anxiety, report of damages, injured, and casualties. But there will be also data that indicates the magnitude or the location of the epicenter of the earthquake. That data is considered neutral. But there will be also text data that contain messages of solidarity, announcements of the arrival of humanitarian aid, or the opening of shelters for homeless people due to the earthquake. That data will be considered positive, that contains positive polarity, because that demonstrates instance of success. This technique, sentiment analysis, have been always used for a customer review of products and places. But here, we have used this technique for the assessment of emergency management and early recovery, because these activities are like services provided by the government to the citizens that have been affected by an earthquake, and they have the right to evaluate these services. We also use topic analysis, which is another natural language processing technique, which automatically extract the topics addressed in the post and comments. Based on the datasets of the 2019 Albania earthquake, 2020 Zagreb, and Aegean earthquake, we have identified so far 14 topics addressed by citizens during after the earthquakes. This has the list. I'm not going through the list. I'm going to start with the first case study that motivated this interest. So the 22nd March 2020, an earthquake with a magnitude 5.3 struck the Croatian city of Zagreb. 1 person died, 26 become injured, 2 persons more died during the cleaning operations. And the particular of this earthquake is that it happened during the lockdown imposed by the European governments to stop the spread of the COVID-19. Then what happened? People in Zagreb, citizens, they didn't know if they should stay at home despite the damages or they should evacuate, but then being exposed to the virus and to the low temperatures outside. The particular of this earthquake is that the earthquake engineering field investigation team, for instance, they couldn't deploy an on-site mission because of the restrictions to travel. Then we have to start obtaining data from Twitter, Instagram, and later from the Last Quake app. How we start? We start looking on Twitter and looking at the hashtag that could somehow be related, contain information about the earthquake. For that, we also have to look how to say earthquake in Croatian, which is potres. And later, we discard those hashtags that contain that with capital letter because they contain the same information as those with lower case. And also those hashtags that contain too general information, not necessarily related to this earthquake, and those hashtags that they contain absolutely nothing related to the earthquake. Then we select exclusively those that were related to the earthquake, those hashtags, and we start the collection of data. We purchased 59,000 tweets from a third-party vendor between the 21st, before the earthquake, and the 39th April, the 31st March before the earthquake, and 39th April after the earthquake, 1 month after the earthquake, more or less. Here we can see the peak of the tweets with those hashtags. The European Mediterranean Center provided us with 31,911 reports. Then we have, so far we have classified the 25% of the tweets, and from the Last Quake app dataset, we have used so far those comments that also contain images. Then we extract the data, we process the data, we classified, we supervisory classified the data, and we plotted the spatial distribution of the polarity and the topics addressed by users on their comments. Then how we start? Because image data in Twitter and Instagram are not georeferenced anymore, but we need to georeference it to know where were the damage. Then we start looking into landmarks. Here is easy because it's the cathedral. It's easy to look in Google Maps the location. Here we see in the background the building of the Croatian Society of Fine Arts. And here we see the debris. In this case, we don't see the damage, but we see the debris. So we assume that there is damage somewhere around. That's why we say damage indicate location proxy indicator. And then in other cases, we look at the name of the streets. And in some other cases, we contact the photographer of Reuters to know where the coordinates of those pictures. We also try to validate the location with using the Google Street Map function, which in the case of Zagreb was challenging because the picture for Zagreb there and 2 out of date, they are from 2011. So we still need the support of local researchers in Zagreb to validate or to know the location of some pictures. We combine the text data and we are able to see the most frequent words that are related, of course, to the phenomenon and to the location, and in this case to the COVID-19 because it's a parallel phenomenon. Also that there was damage because not every earthquake produced damage, but this one produced it. The urban facilities or critical facilities that were affected, in this case the hospital, especially the Women's Disease and Obstetrician Clinic in Zagreb, and who was the most affected group of population, in this case was the newborn babies, and who supported the emergency response, the firefighters, the government, and in this case, in this particular case, the supporters of the Dynamo football club who support the evacuation of newborn babies in the hospital. Then, when we georeference the pictures from Twitter and Instagram, we see that the damage is mainly concentrated in the city center, which is normal because the epicenter was nearby, was I think here. If we make a zoom, we can see the spatial distribution of the damages. Here, with the 25% of the data classified, we have identified 39. We have been able to georeference 39 pictures. Here we can see a sample of the picture and the text that goes with the pictures. Then, from using the data from the European Mediterranean Seismological Center, we have the advantage that the data is already georeferenced. We don't have to look for the location. So here we see the location of intensity report from last QAP users, the intensity reported by them from Zagreb, and from there we can observe the location of damages in the outskirts of the city. But again, still most of the damage is concentrated in the city center. And here we can see a sample of the pictures and comments from last QAP users, which are more related to intensity and damage. Then here we can see a map with the spatial distribution of the comments and pictures. And here we see the negative polarity is the majority, followed by neutral and some positive. And if we compare with the map of usability of buildings according to the degree of damage, we see that there is a correspondence with the comments between negative polarity and the unusability of buildings that is represented in red. Those buildings represented in red are not usable, and usually it matches with the negative polarity. This map was developed by the University of Zagreb. The same happened with the topics. For the case of Zagreb, we mainly identified 5 topics: building damage, solidarity messages, early recovery, emergency response, and seismic information. And if you see the location of damages in buildings match with those buildings that are not usable due to the degree of damage. This data set is available at after anonymization. So in this data set, you won't see coordinates, you will see Twitter handles. So after this anonymization process, this data set is available on the repository of Newcastle University for public consultation. If we move to the case of the Aegean earthquake, that was an earthquake that happened the 30th October 2020. It had a magnitude of 6.9. I think 119 people died, 1,053 become injured, and there was more than 50,000 homeless people due to the earthquake. Here we can see some of the pictures taken by the last QAP users. And the particular in this case is that the earthquake activated a mini tsunami in the Aegean Sea. Here we can see the effects. Then we have 2 sources of data, last QAP users and Twitter. But in this case, we mainly focus on the data coming from last QAP users. Here we can see the intensity reports that are mainly from Turkey and the Greek coast. Most of the comments were in Turkish, as is expected. It was strange that only 4 comments were written in Greek. And the most frequent intensity reported was 3, followed by 4, 2, 5, 1, and 6. Here we can see the epicenter of the earthquake and the distribution of the intensity reports with their magnitude. Then, the methodology is that LASCO app users submit text and image data through the LASCO app. EMC storage that data. They provided us with a CSV file. We translated to English, we correct spelling mistakes and so on. Given that it were like 2,518 reports, we make a supervised classification in sentiment and topic analysis, and we present the spatial distribution of the polarity. We plotted the spatial distribution of the polarity and the topics, like in the case of Zagreb. This database is also stored in the repository of data of Newcastle University and is available for public consultation after anonymization process. Then here we can see an example of the tweets, of the comments and pictures taken by the LASCO app users. So how we classify? So those reports of line intensity, short seismic movements, slide checks, solidarity messages, emergency response action, and preparedness are considered positive. All report of damages, injuries, and long seismic movements of a strong check are considered negative, and seismic information is considered neutral. Then here, I want to show you some examples of comments classified as positive, classified into negative, or neutral polarity. And here we can see the spatial distribution of the polarity, in which we see that the negative polarity is mainly along the coast and in some Greek islands. We still see some positive polarity inside, far from the epicenter, which is here, but mainly negative polarity. We also classify the comments into their topics. Here we can see some example of comments that address the topic of building damages, the topic of lifeline affected, and the topics of the impact of the tsunami. And here we can see the spatial distribution of the topics addressed in comments and tweets, in comments from LASCO app. So building damage, we see that is mainly distributed along the coast near to Izmir and here. Tsunami effects, of course, is located in the Greek islands and in the coast near Izmir. And lifeline affected, we can see 1, 2, 3 reports also along the coast. But also we can see where is located and the needs of vulnerable population, such as pregnant women, such as physically challenged people, undocumented migrants who are not going to look for support because of the fear to be deported, and the need of preparedness at the schools to know how students and teachers should face an earthquake. Then if we look at the word cloud, in this case, here we have a sample of 30 from 101. We see that in this case, the text data set indicate mainly the name of the cities from where the report are submitted and the elements that were impacted by the earthquake in green. Then in this way, we can corroborate the intensity reported. This dataset is also available for public consultation in the repository of Newcastle University. Then I can conclude that the users of social media and crowdsourcing platform have different profiles. And you can see in the text data that the text and image data that they provide. While Twitter and Instagram data are useful for a situation awareness, the data provided by last web user are more useful for earthquake recognition because it's more focusing on description of damages and intensity. I couldn't find any report of injuries and casualties among the comments from last web users, which is something that you find in Twitter and Instagram. It's necessary to find the citizen, to train the citizens to provide more objective and less subjective data. Then we will need less time to clean and to process the data sets before make the polarity, the sentiment, or the topic analysis, because so far it's really time consuming. So how you can contribute? First, when an earthquake or a tsunami happens, first, protect yourself. Second, report that you are safe using any application. This is just a suggestion. Use any of the app of the social media platform or crowdsourcing platforms to report needs and damages, and take pictures that allow to know where they were taken. And please, in case you are going to report injured or casualties, please include the address, considering that Twitter is not your reference anymore. Then if you are reporting is someone that is trapped, it's good to include the address. That makes easier or quick to arrive the arrival of search and rescue teams. I also encourage you to install apps such as Lastquake app, Earthquake Network, or MyShake. Why? Because they give you alerts of earthquakes, and also they make your phone a kind of seismo. They make your phone. They make that your phone also detect seismic signal, and also you can get early warnings. Or if you want to go on field, maybe you can join the earthquake engineering field investigation team that it's here in UK. There are many in the world, but this is in UK, and maybe have the opportunity to visit one of the areas affected by earthquakes and contribute with your expertise. So these are the reference used so far in this research. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Jana, for that presentation on a kind of really fascinating, I guess, use of modern technologies to tackle a relatively old and very important problem, which is risk mitigation, I guess, or trying to understand also the actual impact of earthquakes on our societies. So if you've got questions, please use the chat to ask them. You can also unmute yourself if you want to. I think you might have to request those through the chat, but I'm very happy to unmute anyone willing to talk directly. It doesn't look there are a few thank you messages coming through. I don't know.
It's mainly from the WhatsApp Quakers.
Very good. Yeah, so Hugh Davis has a question. So first of all, thank you, Bashu, as well. So how long does the processing take?
A lot. So far it's time consuming. Well, also because we are starting with that. So first, because, but also because I need to translate it to English to make it easy to everyone to understand. Yes. Also because you need to remove unrelated data. There are as a bad practice is that some people use the hashtag of the earthquake to promote insurance for buildings, or to promote the sales of buildings, or to promote any other kind of stuff. That's something that in which also citizens must be trained. So it's necessary first to translate to English to remove unrelated data. But I think with the time it will be possible to make that process quickly. And also I realized when I arrived to Cardiff that there is Cosmos, that is a software that is designed to extract data from Twitter, because so far we have to purchase the data from a third-party vendor, but this software, it's possible to collect data and to have it without have to pay. You can collect the data also manually, but then it will take you more time than if you just purchase. But the advantage to have to collect the data manually is that it's a supervised collection. Then you don't get any unrelated data.
So I don't know if you have missed this part, but so how many days would it take, or months, or weeks, or it's a fairly complicated process. So I probably see this, but does it take very long?
Yes, I cannot. I for the case, it's because I haven't done I haven't dedicated myself specifically to this.
Sure.
I have to do it, and yeah. But I remember that for the case of L'Aquila, but it was for disaster process. There were 4,300 tweets. It was like 4 months. But as I say, not dedicated totally, just working. Yes. And so far, I have, for instance, I have the data of Zagreb is the 25% is already classified, but it's 58,000 tweets. The case of Zagreb, no, in the case of Haiti, it's 48,000. I have the 15% classified. In the case of Chile, I have the 20%, is 47 as well, more or less. But in this large data set, there are a lot of retweets. So at the end, it's only the 33% or the 17% who are original, which is something that you have to take into account. But according to the needs, I have been classifying data not dedicated to only one case. But I think it could be easier if it could be easy to count if somebody is totally dedicated to that. Also, it's necessary to count with the support of locals for local expressions in Italian or from Chile. In Chile, they use a lot of slangs. Then you really need to look in internet what they want to say with their expressions. Also from Zagreb, we have a support of one colleague who translate the idioms from that language that Google Translate don't recognize. Google Translate don't recognize harsh expressions, and you need it to classify to make an accurate classification of the polarity of the data.
Yeah. See, thanks a lot. Yeah, I think someone is actually willing to get unmuted. I'm going to try to do this, but just before doing this, I'm going to ask another question to Diana. So then, couldn't you use, for instance, artificial intelligence or collaborate with IT engineers to try to see if artificial intelligence could help you make the process a little bit faster? Because we hear a lot about it, artificial intelligence, for instance, on how it can be applied sometimes positively, sometimes negatively, especially on social platforms like Facebook and so on. Would that be a possibility for you also?
We use it, David. We already use it. So after the data is translated to English, we are using Mojica, which is a service as a software. And then we compare the result of the supervised classification done by me and the classification done by the algorithm. So what we did is we train a sample of 10% and telling the algorithm, this is positive, this is negative, this is neutral. And then based on that sample, the algorithm classified the rest. So far, the accuracy that we have found is between 57 and 63%, which are still okay. Everything above 50 is still acceptable. The idea is an accuracy of 65%, but we use it already. The problem is not the artificial, the problem is and I have discussed it with other data scientists from Cardiff University, the process is, what it takes a lot of time is cleaning the data and processing the data. Later, you can try the algorithm, you can try different algorithms of different mechanisms of artificial intelligence and then check the accuracy. But it's good to the advantage of use artificial intelligence, despite the acceptable level of accuracy, is the classification is consistent.
Interesting. Thanks a lot. Ina, do you want to say something? I think you are muted and should be able to talk to us directly now.
Yes, thank you, David. Thank you, Diana, for this fascinating presentation. I think that the possibilities that are given by the methods you are showing to us are really immense. And I can only imagine the difficulties in translating texts from small languages like Croatian, so that you cannot really try have a lot of texts to compare to. But I have just a seismological remark. As a seismologist, I would like to point out that the data that you're talking about, that you were analyzing from the EMSC, are not intensity data. They are just felt data, because intensity is a parameter for earthquake that comes out as a result of an evaluation. It is not based on a single observer, but you evaluate intensity for a village or a city quarter or some special unit. But your data you're analyzing that are collected at EMSC are just felt data. So this is methodologically a difference between these two terms.
Yes, Ina. Well, I say that because usually, let me see if I can go back here and remove this. Usually what the LASCOIAP user have is these cartoons, and each cartoon show them the different intensities in the Mercalli scale from 1 to, I think, some Mercalli scales goes to 10, other to 13. Yes? But
yes, the scale is European macroseismic scale, and it goes from 1, not felt, to 12, complete destruction.
Exactly. Yes, that's why they report. Based on these cartoons, they say, okay, what I felt is more or less like 3 or like 5. Yes, that's why I say intensity, that maybe is not much the exact concept of seismologists.
Okay, yes, I understand, but as a seismologist dealing with intensity data, so I was just pointing out that if we are going strictly into the terminology, so the correct term would be felt data.
Yes, I know. But for me, the most interesting of the comments is the description of damages, the description of the emergency actions taken by people. Some people said that they just stay at home or evacuate, other apply the triangle of life. Yes. Or what they talk about the preparedness that they have taken before, the damage in lifelines. This is what is more interesting for me now. And now that you mentioned, one of the most difficult data sets, and that's why I haven't progressed that much with that, is the data set of Twitter, coming from Twitter, for the Aegean earthquake, because most of the tweets are in Turkish and in Greek, and I'm not proficient in any of those languages. So I will need local researchers to help me with that. Curiously for me, have been straight more the data set related to the 10th anniversary of the earthquake in Chile. First, because most of the tweets are in Spanish, and I'm a Spanish speaker, and because I live in Chile for 8 months, so I know several of the expressions that they use on the tweets. So that have been straight for me. Definitely, you need the location of someone that knows the local language. Because, and there is something, the last thing is that the algorithms, any algorithm from artificial intelligence recognize sarcasm. So there are tweets that say, hey, this government thinks that it's doing always right. Congratulations. Yes, but then you realize that what the user wants to say is totally the opposite.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, thanks a lot, Diana, for this comment. It's kind of a small irony that actually we're back to talking about the meaning of words, and Ina was basically arguing on the meaning of some terminology. So it looks like even scientists speaking the same English language don't agree on some of the words. So it must be really complex when you start looking at the problem across several languages and cultures. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Thanks a lot for this talk, Diana. And so I hope that for the audience, I hope you had some fun today. Again, don't hesitate to help us advertise the next GeoTalk. So the program is on our webpage. The next talk is going to be by Pete Brabham on some mining and geothermal ideas in Wales is going to be on the 1st of December. In the meantime, if you want to revisit or look at some missed previous webinars, feel free to look at our YouTube channel. It's up and running, including the presentations of this series. So thank you again, Diana, for this interesting presentation. Thank you all, and I hope to see you soon again.
Thank you for the invitation.